Okay, excellent. Well, different kind of an introduction here. You guys are used to seeing me do this a different way. I'm going to be a part of this fireside chat with Michael here, and I'm very excited to dive into this topic. Feel free to move about for another 30 seconds, and then I'm hitting the buzzer. We have some seats in the front if you guys would like to make your way, but Michael, welcome, and I'm excited to chat with you and hear about your experience and talk about from burnout to balance, which is a really important topic, especially for entrepreneurs and you founders here in the room. So anyways, I first just want to say welcome and thanks for being willing to do this.
Thanks for that, for having me here. Happy to be here, and of course wouldn't have want to miss this event.
Yeah, excellent. Well, first of all, we can, is my mic working here? You guys can hear me okay? Yeah, okay, great. First of all, we have to give him a congratulations because he's a new father, times two. Had a second baby, yes. Also, please be sure to maybe say something to his wife on social media. Congratulations to the family for the other baby and for her certainly letting you travel. It was so recent. How's everything going now?
Thanks a lot, first of all. Going well so far. Little Paul was actually born just recently, and officially I'm on paternity leave at the moment, but of course, again, didn't want to miss the event here. But yeah, no, overall I can't complain so far. Pretty lucky with the second one.
Excellent. Yeah, we're not going to talk about parent burnout today, though we could certainly spend a whole lot of time talking about parent burnout. But Michael, you've been a part of some very fast-paced environments and fast-growing companies, and certainly prior to, I guess also we should announce your new assignment and posting as CEO now of Navan. That also warrants another applause. So I imagine you have quite a number of stories that you could tell, but can you talk to us a little bit about what it's been like to work in some of those fast-paced environments and the busy years that maybe you've had in some of the startups and companies you've been a part of?
Yeah, cool. Maybe first of all, like when we were coming up with the topic, or I saw the topic, I think it's a topic that often is not being discussed enough, especially between entrepreneurs and founders, and everyone is always on a ride and a journey, and and I think this is something that I think should have more focus, because I can truly say I think everyone, no matter how successful or not successful, like you need to deal with that and spend time on this, right?
Yes.
And if I look at my journey, for example, I've been part of Rocket Internet in the early days, then moved to the US, spent quite some time in San Francisco, then started my own company, with Comtravo, scaled that business to roughly 400 people, before then selling it to Trip Actions, now Navan, which was quite a ride, right? And on paper, again, like this looks always pretty easy, pretty straight, pretty successful. But the reality is, and I think this is, again, what like few people talk about, is there's so many ups and downs where like you mentally definitely struggle on the way there, right? And just to give some examples, right? So again, while we scaled Comtravo from like 0 to 400 people, there was COVID in between, right? And suddenly COVID was that moment where and Comtravo was also similar to Navan, a one-and-all business travel solution to book your travel, do your expenses and all these things. And you can imagine during COVID, like from today to tomorrow, like no one was traveling anymore, right? Yeah. So what do? Suddenly you have a business, 300 people there, and you have not much to do, right? And that's definitely moments that are extremely tough. And if you're then not like mentally balanced, and we can talk about that in a little bit, I think this can pretty quickly become pretty critical.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, and I completely agree. And when I was talking to the SaaStock team about the topic here for the fireside chat, and we were exploring if this would be an important one to consider, and I said, absolutely. I think this is extremely relevant for where a lot of founders and just people in general, yes, but I think there are certain types of people and situations that could add additional fuel to the fire of burnout and make it a little bit difficult, especially with COVID, what happened, and there's different levels of stress that come at varying stages of leadership. So I'm glad that we are having this topic and this conversation. Now, I would say for the room, and you don't have to put your hand up, but the statistic is 50% of entrepreneurs face burnout, according to a study. And I'm curious if you'd be willing to share, maybe going back to the COVID time, what was that like? I mean, yeah, your industry was hit probably definitely more than most. What were some of the practical things that maybe you did to maintain your stress level properly and just prioritize well-being? Talk to us a little bit, unpack what was it like in that time for you?
Yeah. I mean, as mentioned before, again, I think that definitely was a tough time in the first place. I think there was a few things that definitely helped me in that phase, and probably pretty generally speaking, that can help in most of those kind of phases where things don't go exactly in line with what you expect them to go like. I think the first one was for me, when I talk to other people that I don't know really well, but like that I somehow know, right? Other founders, other people working in the tech industry and so on, things are almost always going well, right? So, and that's what they tell you, like even during COVID, yeah, like it's ultimately COVID is also an opportunity and so on, and all these things are true, right? So COVID definitely is an opportunity and there's a lot you can do with it and so on. But that is not the true story, right? The true story is in the first place, you don't have a business there anymore in that moment, and you need to find a solution. And which means that the first thing that really helped me is, I do have a few close friends that are also founders, entrepreneurs, that very openly share their struggles and how they manage to do this, right? So actually a good friend of mine, he's also a founder of a company headquartered here in Europe, and they are in the fitness space. They're basically one of the biggest fitness tracking apps. And they're working with a lot of the gyms. And like those gyms also, like they were closed at the beginning of COVID, right? And like just knowing that there's other people and being able to openly share your thoughts and thinking with people that are in the same boat was extremely helpful. And that meaning finding these type of people where you say, hey, you have a really trusted relationship to very candidly speak about things is worth a lot. So I think that's one thing to do sparing.
Yep.
I think the other thing, and this is a bit more general also doesn't necessarily have to be the COVID type of crisis, but just like the daily type of crisis that you have, right? So you wanted to hire someone and suddenly that person declined, but you really have worked hard on getting that person on board, right? Or like your business numbers are not looking as good as you want them to look this month. And so there's a lot of like difficult moments also. And I think for me, it's always also finding a balance and then often people say in sports, but I think it doesn't have to be sports, but it needs to be something else that allows you to focus your mind on something that is not your business. And I give you an example. So I'm, for example, I love to play tennis, and tennis for me is a little bit like yoga, in the sense of that if you play tennis, you have to be there in that moment, because you have an opponent, you need to decide on like how do you play the ball and so on. That means I have zero time to actually think about the business. And just that 1 hour, and this can, again, it doesn't have to be tennis, it can be anything where you're forced to focus on something that has nothing to do with your business. That actually gives me a lot of energy. And the other example, and very different, it's also sports, but again, you can choose your own or like figure out what's your own example there, is running. I also love to run a lot. There, the effect is actually very different. So I might have this moment in the office where things went horribly wrong, right? So I didn't end up getting what I wanted to get and so on. And then I come out of work with a pretty negative mindset, right? So I think like, oh shit, like this really didn't go the way I wanted to go. And then I go running. And this costs me a lot of motivation to actually then start going running. And this is also scientifically proven, but this mentally does something with you, right? So while you go running, like I think it produces hormones, so you can read about it, but like definitely by the time that you come home later, like I don't know, an hour later or whatever, like I promise you feel energized. Because it really it changes your setting, you're running into one direction and so on, and this definitely holds true for me, right? Like so I come home and okay, shit, now we're tackling this. Let's get there and so on, and it's a challenge, it's not a problem and so on, right? So and finding these type of things, even for like let's say the smaller daily crisis or weekly crisis, is very, very helpful for me.
I love that. I'm learning so much even just in our conversation right now. I love the distinction between activities that kind of keep your mind distracted and focused on what you're doing right now so you can't even think about work. It's so easy to default and fall back to thinking about people you need to message, emails you need to get to, and tennis. Have you ever heard of pickleball, by the way?
Yeah, funnily enough, like I have a good amount of conversations on pickleball.
Yeah.
But we have that European thing called paddle.
Paddle, I've heard of paddle.
Which is, I know it's different, and
yes.
but it's similar enough, and that's I'm playing that from time to time.
Anybody play paddle? Any paddlers here? You call yourselves Oh man, ambitious, yes.
Yes.
Enthusiastic paddlers here in the house. And I was saying earlier, I just heard about hurling. Have you heard about hurling?
Hurling?
Hurling? Any hurlers in the auditorium? Yeah, okay, yeah. We'll have to look that up afterwards. It's kind of like this variation of like golf and like rugby and everything all in one. It's very interesting. It's an Irish thing. But anyways, all that to say, yes, find an activity that you can focus on and kind of unplug and get away. I think that's really helpful. Is there like a certain time of day when you do that? Because again, maybe entrepreneur or founder guilt, like, oh, I should be doing this activity at this time of day versus I'm out doing something that might be considered unproductive.
Yeah. I think there's no right or wrong in terms of the time of the day, but I think there's also one learning I'd love to share, which is let's take tennis again as an example. I used to have, like, for example, in the winter season, you have that fixed commitment that you basically say, hey, Monday evenings, 8 p.m., or can be Monday mornings, 8 a.m., whatever your time is. And I used to miss it constantly, right? When I started my own company back, 8 years ago or something, I constantly had higher priorities in work, right? So, and there's always enough stuff to do, right? Like the amount of work that you have and priorities that you have in work, there's always more you can do there than like going to your tennis lesson, right? And I was really bad at prioritizing that tennis lesson, which meant that I actually paid for that thing and like I didn't really make it all the time. What I changed at some point is I very transparently and openly communicated that to all my employees, all my team members, including my investors, everyone else, that, hey, Monday evening, and for me it's Monday evening, 8 p.m., 8 to 10 p.m., I'm playing tennis. And really it has to be like, the business needs to go completely under for me not to make it. There's no higher priority for me, like there's no meetings during that time and whatever. And this can also be morning hours and so on. But like really putting it in your calendar, actively communicating around it, that this is your time, and prioritizing this. This is what really changed it. And since then I'm not missing it. I'm literally like, I think I've missed it once in the last 2 years.
That's right? Fantastic.
And you might need to start working after or before, and you need to manage around it, but everyone knows it, so there's not even a discussion around it, right? So, and I think that is what like was one of the biggest changes there to do it. And for the rest of the time, you need to figure out what works well for you. Are you working more in the US context? Are you an early morning person, evening person?
Yeah, good. You know, burnout, I think there's, it's something that comes on gradually, right? Like it's not something where you just wake up and all of a sudden you feel maybe the sensation of burnout. I think there's burnout creep and it just happens over time. Is there something that maybe you've put into practice or have done to develop that sense of awareness of, oh man, I feel like maybe if I sustain this level of activity or the path that I'm going on, it's gonna lead to burnout. How do you develop that sense of awareness?
Yeah. So the answer might be a bit different from what you're expecting, but the way, and not necessarily about burnout, but I'd say more around like balance of life. The way how I think about it is, and it's a very simplified view, I'm very aware of this, but I always think about life in like terms of 4 pillars that do matter for you to have let's say a sustainable life, right? From my perspective, one is friends, one is family, one is work, and one is, I call it passion. So whatever else I think you consider in your life that is important, can be what you do in your leisure time, it can be some other passion you have, and so on. And I think those 4 pillars, always one pillar can be shaky, right? It can be that you struggle with your family at the moment, it can be that you have some discussions with friends, it can be that you struggle in work, and so on. But as long as there's only one pillar that is shaky, it should not be a problem. Because like a house, right? Like a house can stand on 3 pillars. So that's fine. As soon as there's 2 pillars that are shaky, meaning that, hey, you have a lot of stress with friends, or like you have a lot of stress with the family or in work, that's something where that can sustain for a little bit of time. But if you have that situation for a longer period of time, it gets really, really difficult. And I think this is then what can lead you into a more kind of a burnout situation and so on. I think just work alone, as long as the other pillars are really stable for you, doesn't necessarily have to, like, or I think it's pretty tough then to get into a burnout. Usually then more pillars from my perspective are shaky, right? And I think that's the way how I think of it. And just like having that in the back of your head, like thinking about it that way, that you know, okay, shit, like, okay, my work right now is really stressful. I'm really not happy with it. There's a lot of things going on and so on. As long as the other pillars are fine, and you manage these other pillars and you're really caring about them, I think you'll be in a good situation or an okay situation.
Good, excellent, thank you. There was a study that I was researching leading up to this conversation that I thought was quite interesting. According to the Journal of Business Venturing, despite working longer hours, entrepreneurs studied were no more likely to experience burnout than salaried employees. In fact, on average, their risk of burnout was lower due to what they call positive psychological effects of entrepreneurial work. And they call this psychological utility. You're learning something new today, because this was all fascinating to me, but they call it psychological utility, a greater sense of meaning, personal autonomy, and job satisfaction that amounts to higher mental returns on investment. And it essentially says there's a sense of fulfillment in your pursuit as a founder or an entrepreneur because you're building something. Having said that, I think it's important that we talk about employee burnout and team member burnout. Now, you manage a lot of people, and there's a lot of employees and team members in your organization, in the company. How has Navan created a space for team members to manage their time and maintain balance between personal and work lives?
Maybe first of all, like to be transparent or give context, like we are a company that is headquartered in the US, with very, very strong and significant presence in Europe by now, so we're more than 1,000 people here in Europe as well. But we're still working also a lot in the US context, which makes it more difficult, right? So that automatically means different time zones, like especially in a global context and so on. So I think this is why I think it is a very critical and important topic. I think a bit in line with what you mentioned for entrepreneurs, I think you can create the same type of environment for employees. Meaning, so why are entrepreneurs, like, let's say, slightly less likely to be burned out even though they're working more? I would call it more simplified. It's like they're a bit more naive and a bit more positive than the rest of the people, so, right? I think the kind of culture that you need to create is don't just like set tasks, right? Don't tell your people, hey, like this is the 20 things you need to do, but just set goals, right? And I think by that you are automatically empowering your employees to decide a lot more on like what's their schedule, how are they doing that, how are they getting there, and so on. So they can pretty much manage themselves, right? And there might be some education for them to need it. If it's more junior employees, like this definitely needs some learning curve to be able to do that. But I think this is one of the most important things, because often burnout comes from, oh shit, I have this 20 things to do here right now, versus if you think about it in a way where, okay, I want to reach this goal end of the week, or I want to reach this goal end of the month, then you're a lot more in control, right? And this kind of empowerment is something that we're trying to focus on a lot in Navan. And of course, that's like way easier if you're in a company that is rapidly scaling, where you know automatically, like next week, the business will look different than it looks this week, default, right? So, which means there's a constant amount of change, which again is a good chance if you don't see this as an opportunity, it can create stress and ultimately burnout again, right? Because it's this constant thing where like everything is in flux, right? So that's just part of the nature of like fast-growing businesses. And I think so, again, like if there was only one recommendation I had to give, and something like I really try to focus on Navan is like, we really focus a lot on like talking about goals, talking about where do we want to be, and then empowering employees to see how to get there. Right, and that helped us. That helped us a lot.
Excellent, excellent, very, very helpful. I know it may seem like the people that come up on stage, leading large companies, people of experience and influence, and it's easy to kind of maybe idealize what it might be like to be in their shoes and think that, well, they don't experience burnout too, and maybe they have it a little bit easier. But I mean, I will speak transparently. There are days where I don't want to work. And actually, I just loathe the idea of going back to my computer. My wife will testify to that. I'm like, I just don't want to work today. Have there been days in your life throughout your journey, your entrepreneurial journey, where you just woke up and you're like, I hate my job. I don't even want to work today. Have there been moments like that?
For sure. I mean, like, for sure, if like there's like, and it can be in the mornings, it can be in the evenings. It's the example I gave before the sports. For sure, there's days where like things that day went horribly wrong, right? So like totally not in line. I had to have these conversations that I didn't want to have. Like we didn't reach the number that I wanted to reach, and so on, right? And again, it comes back to the pillar topic plus the activity topic, right? So I think then it's very, very valuable to zoom out, to step back from like whatever that shit is that is going on at work at that point of time. Like try to focus on something else. And I think then if you like reflect about it a bit more, then maybe you come up with the idea, hey, it's actually maybe not that bad, and it's actually pretty normal that you have these struggles and so on, right? But that means, like, yes, you can theoretically work 24/7 in any kind of startup setting, in any kind of, especially in early stage, right? So this is where every individual hour matters a lot more. And I think then it's so important to like still prioritize the zoom out time to get back to work then and have a lot more motivation when you come back.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. This has gone by very fast. Is there anything maybe next, anything that we missed that you'd like to say, or what does it look like next at Navan for you now as CEO? What does the rest of the year look like in maybe 2024?
Yeah. There's a lot of exciting things coming up. Obviously, I don't want to make this an advertisement, but like we continue to invest a lot in the European market, also with a lot of job openings. They have exactly the mindset on employee goal setting that I described before. So a lot of exciting stuff. Definitely not. It's definitely not going to be boring.
Excellent. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I hope this was helpful for everybody here today. If you're experiencing burnout, I would say the biggest takeaway is find somebody that you can talk to and be honest with, and just share how you're feeling and maybe what you're experiencing. And that, I mean, we're built to live in community, right? And that's why I love SaaStock so much, because you can find such great community here. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you again for your time, Michael. And that's it.
Thanks a lot.